can see the link that Frank sent.
Yeah, that guy, it's been excellent. It's
Yeah,
about 40 PDFs there.
yeah,
It was really well done. I didn't have any trouble following it. I just did everything he put.
yeah,
Maybe some with the permissions, setting up service accounts and things like that. I got a little, it didn't say where to do these things, but I figured it out and
yeah.
it's worked.
Yeah, nice one. Yeah, I agree. So the website Frank is talking about is in the chat window by Pradwal the site. So he's a really really intense SCCM blogger, I tell you that. So I've also read a lot of his blogs and articles and all that, and he does blog on a lot of things SCCM related. Another one is of course
Yeah,
the yeah.
his website it is in my favorite, you know.
Yeah, he's really good.
Yeah,
So yeah, I like it also. I recommend it.
yeah,
So.
yeah.
And
Thank
then
you.
the Windows Noob one also is a good one also. So the Windows Noob guys have and does anyone know of these guys? So let me bring this one up. So if I go share my screen. Hello Taiwo, welcome. How are you doing today?
Hello.
Yeah,
I'm good. I'm good.
yeah. For everyone that may not know Taiwo, Taiwo is a really is well Taiwo doesn't work that much with Taiwo is more of an ADFS guy now, but he used to be my VMware expert. Like if I have any VMware issue, I go to Taiwo. But now he's left VMware now. He's now ADFS stuff that he's doing. So
Uh,
in
do
case
you
you
believe
in case you get any questions with SCC, with something with ADFS, send me a message.
Okay, thank you.
Can you see my screen? You can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. So this guy is what's the name of? Let me bring this one up. So if I go bring my Kindle up, Kindle. So there are these guys that really do write a lot of books. I think their website is something maybe advanced deployment, something like that. Um, so advanced deployment or let's go. Yeah. So if you can see my screen. Um, so these guys, Kent Agelund. So like this one, they've got this one which basically SCCM 2012. But what they usually do is they'll follow like a scenario that you can follow. But apart from that, they've got some really, really good ones on SCCM, like this one, which is just basically advanced Windows deployment. And this is using a different software apart from SCCM. But yeah, they've got really, really good books on SCCM. I really recommend them. Deployment fundamentals. This one, they basically just went into Server 2012 MDT using PowerShell to do automated deployments and stuff. So I recommend their books. They're really good guys. Enterprise Client Management, no. And basically where they just talked about, good ways to manage your devices in the enterprise and all that. So I recommend their books also. I don't get any, they don't give me any money or anything, but they are good books. And the good thing actually is that I'm not sure if anyone has a subscription to Amazon Kindle website. So if you have like that subscription, I think you pay like about in UK it's about £7 something every month. So basically you can get access to like a lot of books, and their books are part of the books that you can get access to if you pay like that monthly subscription stuff. So it's a good one. Okay. So let's carry on today with a bit of where we stopped last time, talking about boundaries and boundary groups and um, then resource discovery in SCCM. Because all the things that we've been talking so far, if I try to separate it, is basically in the beginning we have to build, of course, we have to build our SCCM infrastructure. We build it. So for us to build it, we have to know what type of design we'll be having. And we already talked about, all the design scenarios, not all, but some of the design scenarios that are available to us. So if we're going to be managing more than 150,000 clients, we already know instantly we need more than, one primary site, or if we're going to be managing more than 10,000 clients, we know we can't use a secondary site. If all overall our whole hierarchy is going to be more than, I think it's 650,000 clients global, for our whole hierarchy, we already know we need more than one central administration site because one central administration site can only take you up to a maximum of 650,000 client. But then the thing is, for you to get that number of clients, you need SQL Enterprise. You can use SQL Standard. You need SQL Enterprise version and all the other sizing. So you have to build your infrastructure first. Then the next thing that you have to do is you have to basically get your client into SCCM. So which is like it's kind of like the thing that we are now. So now we have an infrastructure. But how do we get clients into that infrastructure so that we can begin to manage them? Um, so for us to get clients into that infrastructure, we need to discover them first. Because the way SCCM works, it's a client server architecture, which means you have a client there, you have your main server, but inside your client, you have a little agent or client installed that does all the communication with the component on the server, maybe with a management point somewhere here. And your client, the client that you've installed on this guy is communicating with this management point to get policies and all that. And this management point is communicating back with this. But for us to be able to install this client on this device here, this SCCM client on this device, we have to discover it first. So, which is the phase that we're doing today, is how to do discovery in Config Manager. So I know this is like really straightforward because a lot of us are already at least exposed to SCCM in one way or the other. So let's throw out the question. What methods are available for us to discover clients? Or actually, I should take the word client away because that's not totally accurate in SCCM 2012. Let's use the word resources. Because one thing that Microsoft has been driving with SCCM 2012 is that, okay, listen, this is not only like a computer management application. It's something that you can use to manage users to an extent. You can manage users in Configuration Manager 2012. Some of the things that we used to be able to do just with group policies, like folder redirections, and a lot of things, we can actually now do some of those things in Config Manager. And I'm sure that going forward, Microsoft will expand on that. So Config Manager is not only just a computer management platform, it's also a user management platform. So it's left for us to decide, is there any advantage using to managing users using Config Manager, managing users using our Active Directory group policy? Of course, one of the does anyone know what advantage or what's the pro of using Config Manager for something that you can do with group policy? What advantage do you see there? Anyone want to answer that? So, Frank, you want to go first? So, what advantage? Is there any advantage? So, if I can set folder redirection with Active Directory group policy, and now Microsoft is saying, see, you can do this same thing with Config Manager. You can do folder redirection with Config Manager. So what's now I have two ways that I can achieve the same thing. Is there any advantage to doing it in Config Manager? Is there any disadvantage to doing it in Config Manager?
I would think that if you did it in Config Manager, you'd have better reporting because you can see whether the policy is being applied, whereas
Excellent. Yeah.
policy, you don't know what's happening.
Excellent. Excellent. That's a really, really excellent point. Very, very excellent point. So better reporting in Config Manager. And that's true because for example, like, okay, it's a typical question in IT, right? You've deployed the policy. How do you tell how many clients have actually applied that policy? Is there a way for you to tell? Is there an easy way for you to tell? You can probably do something with PowerShell, but is there an easy way that you can go to, Group Policy Management Console and tell, oh, I've got 500 machines that have applied this policy. I've got 200 machines that are not compliant with this policy. Is there any easy way that you know of, Abdul? Taiwo? Any easy way to do that in Microsoft? It's a popular question in system admin's mind. How do I monitor, my group policies? How do I monitor compliance of group policies? Is there an easy way to monitor compliance of group policies? Abdul, what do you think? Because we're interacting.
In group policy, there is no way to monitor the compliance.
Yeah. So I'm sure that there will be a third-party product out there, that you can use, or there will be like some kind of script that you can run that will do that. But there's no easy way out of the box. But that's like one advantage that Frank has mentioned. Better reporting in Config Manager. You do that, you can monitor, is this client compliant, is it not compliant? Any other advantage that you can think of, apart from better reporting in Config Manager?
Well, you can section out where you want to apply it at what point. So um,
Yeah, but we can also do that with group policy also. We can say use something like security filtering.
right.
We can even go ahead and even do WMI filtering, and go deep into WMI and say this only applies to machines that fit this WMI filter. So, but you're close. There's another reason. Abdul, what do you think? Is there any other reason why? Because, yeah, carry on.
Time,
You said time.
time, yeah.
What? Yeah,
Scheduling,
explain what you mean by time. Oh, okay, you mean the
scheduling.
time. Good one
Yep,
also.
time.
So, and that's another good point because now you can schedule it, you can have control, more control, basically. You can say, I want this to apply at this time, I want this to apply at this other time. So, yeah, so in terms of scheduling, yeah, that's one. One other one that I can think of, I'm not sure, Taiwo, any other thing that you want to add to that?
No,
Yeah,
no, I
yeah.
can't think of any other thing.
Yeah, I mean the only one. So that's right. The only one, the other one I can think of that comes to mind is, um, if you think about it also, like although this is like a really rare scenario for many enterprises, but Active Directory group policy only applies when machine is joined to the domain. If the machine is not joined to the domain, basically you have no management on that machine. You can't do folder redirection when the machine is not joined to the domain. It's not getting any group policy from the domain because it's not joined to the domain. But config manager gives you the opportunity to manage, all these things outside the domain. All the resources that are not within the domain, you can still manage them and all that stuff. So basically, Microsoft is pushing more outside. Don't look at config manager as just something to manage devices. Yeah, it's something that can manage resources in your enterprise. So by resources, they mean users, they mean computers, they mean probably computers mean groups, and yeah, and probably let's even put it this way. Let's put networks. So it's a platform to manage resources. So how do we now discover those resources? So let's start with the first one, um, with users. So what are the methods that we can use to discover users or to bring users into Config Manager? What methods do we have? What methods are available to discover users in Config Manager? So Taiwo, I know you wanted to say something.
No, said, I think there's only one that I know, which is the Active Directory User Discovery.
Yeah, excellent,
That's the only one I know in SCCM.
excellent. Yeah, so good one. So Taiwo said, okay, one way that we can discover users and bring them into Config Manager is Active Directory User Discovery. So let's go ahead and see that. So normally you go under your administration console, which where you do a lot of administration. And under your discovery method, the method that I was talking about is Active Directory User Discovery. But let's put it this way also. If we go back to users here, not Okay. So yeah. So that's probably the only one. So we cannot create users manually because that was what I wanted to confirm here is that can we add users manually into config manager? But no, we can't add users manually. So again, this brings up to another point. If we cannot add users manually, then the benefit of saying we're doing this for computers that are not joined to the domain. So what's the benefit in that? If you can't add users manually, you can't use like local accounts or something like that. So okay, but that's just another thought. Okay, so Active Directory user discovery. So Taiwo, what's your understanding of Active Directory user discovery? Just walk us through how this works. Um, what are the things, how does it work? Active Directory user discovery.
Um, well, because SCCM is because your SCCM server is already domain joined,
Mm-hmm,
and doing before you install SCCM,
mm-hmm,
you need to ensure that the server has right to some containers on your Active Directory.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I mean, basically, the SCCM server must
mm-hmm,
have rights to Active Directory.
yeah,
So with one of the service accounts which you must have configured somewhere, I can't remember
mm-hmm,
where, you'll be able to pull all the users from your domain into SCCM by
yeah,
enabling Active Directory user discovery.
yeah,
And that runs every 7 days or I can't remember how long, but you can
yeah.
change that also. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So basically, yeah, so it's just basically, where your users are, in your domain. You just basically configure config manager to go into Active Directory. So what it does, it selects the closest domain controller to it using Active Directory sites and services, selects the closest domain controller to the site server, and then goes into Active Directory and pulls all this user information into Active Directory. So when you're configuring this, it's a really simple configuration. You go on the discovery method, you select the properties of the user discovery, and then you enable it. Then what you have to do is now configure the path in terms of where do I want config manager to search for in Active Directory to pull the users from. So if I want, I may say I don't want you to search through all my entire domain. I can say I only want you to search a particular organization unit or whatever. So we can configure that. We can say recursively search Active Directory child containers, which simply means don't only search if this has a sub OU under it. Don't only search this OU, search all the sub OUs under it and discover any users that are in the sub OUs under this main OU. So we can say that. I'll cancel all that. So discover objects within Active Directory groups. So it's saying, so this one is another one that we'll probably talk about more in details when we talk about groups. So when it says discover object within Active Directory books, what do you think it means? Because this one can be a bit confusing.
What's that?
Discover object within Active Directory book groups.
I
So
think
what does that
that
mean?
that includes discovering groups also.
Yeah, so I mean, in view, what this one just simply means, because it can be confusing, is if you're searching through this OU, because it's Active Directory User Discovery, if you see a group in this OU, discover all the members of that group. So in other words, let's say the account Taiwo or the account Frank is under this OU here, but I'm not searching the OU. But the account Frank and Taiwo, they are members of a group which I've put in this OU. What I'm saying is, if you see a group in this OU, also look into that group, look for the members of that group and discover them. So that's what this one just means. It just means if you see a group there, yeah, look into them, discover the users in those groups. So that will explain some things because I've seen a situation in our own environment where we've excluded a particular OU, but you still go to config manager and you still see those users there and you're like, but hold on, I've excluded this OU. But what will happen is you have a group that those users that you've excluded in that OU are a member of, and you're discovering that folder or that OU. So what it does is once it gets there, it sees that group's there. It also discovers the members of that group. So is that clear, Tom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Then the next thing is Active Directory account must have read permissions. This is the one that I will mention. So this one you can actually just leave it to use your computer account, which just means the site server computer's account, which is sufficient because every user and computer in Active Directory by default has read permissions to Active Directory. So you don't need to specify a separate account. But let's say there are some domains that you've done extra security, which means you've not used the default settings in Active Directory. You've tightened up Active Directory some more. So in that case, you may need a special account that has read permissions to your Active Directory domain that can pull out all this information. So that's just what this one is about. So you select that. Then the other one is what I will mention. You can configure how often I want you to pull. So this one is an important one, very, very important one. Here we have an option that says enable Delta discovery. So Abdul, what does that mean? Enable Delta discovery. So because this one is important to some other thing that we'll discuss. So when we say enable Delta discovery, what are we referring to? Is Abdul still there? Or we go to Frank. So Frank, what do we mean when we say enable Delta discovery?
It looks like if anything new shows up
Yeah,
within your poll.
yeah, yeah, excellent. So Delta discovery just simply means what you said. Anything new comes up, run this. So basically, this one schedule means we want you to do a full discovery every 7 days. Every 7 days, go in and do a full discovery. But every 5 minutes, go and check Active Directory and say, hey, is there anything new? If there's anything new, discover that. So, but here's one thing to notice with this, is that when we say Delta Discovery, it has limitations. And actually, let's just bring up the Microsoft page for this. Because Delta Discovery does have limitations, and some of the limitation is it doesn't discover everything. Let's go. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So if we scroll down to where it talks about Delta Discovery, yeah, here we go. So it says Delta Discovery can detect the following new resource types. It can detect new computer objects, user objects, security groups, system group objects. It says Delta Discovery cannot detect when a resource has been deleted from Active Directory domain services. You must run a full discovery cycle to detect this change. So if you've deleted an object, Delta Discovery doesn't go and detect, yeah, this object has been deleted. That change won't be discovered until the next time that full discovery happens. So Delta Discovery does have that limitation of it can discover deletions. So only if you've added something new, if you've modified something, but not discover anything that you've deleted. And then of course you can specify. Why would you want to specify, attributes to detect? What advantage does this give you? Anyone wants to go? So what advantage? Why would you want to specify and say when you're discovering users, I want you to discover this attribute of users? Why would you want to do that? Any reason why would you want to do that? Frank, what do you think? Is there any reason why you want to say because any Active Directory object has a lot of attributes. So why would you want to say I want you to go and be discovering, now we have selected by default it discovers this attribute, but we can go and say we want you to discover all these other attributes or even say discover custom attributes. So
It,
why
it
would
looks
you want to do that?
it looks like just to make it more granular, to get farther into what you want.
Yeah, exactly. So that's right. So that's absolutely right. Because later, one thing that this could give to you is flexibility. Because later you probably be creating collections, for example, to deploy maybe applications to, or to deploy operating system to. So in that case, when you're saying deploy to this collection, if you've discovered any of these attributes, you can use the attribute within your queries. So basically, I can go and say, hey, actually, I just want a collection for users whose street address is this. So any attribute you had for discovery here, you can use that attribute in a query for anything that you want to build later. So if you say, I want to import attribute for last logon time, so that's really, really useful. Because let's say you want to be like, yeah, I don't want to be wasting my time. I know that if a computer object hasn't logged in for the past 60 days, it's no longer valid. So I just want to create this separate collection that will target only computers that have logged in since the past 60 days. But because you've discovered this attribute that contains that information, now you can use that in the query that builds the collection. You can use that to be as granular, like you said, as possible, and then just gives you like a lot of flexibility that you can use to target your deployment as much as you want. So here's the thing about this one. Active Directory user discovery, like what I was said by default, once you enable it by default, it will do full discovery every 7 days. So you can change that to whatever you want. But if you're changing it to whatever you want, you have to be careful because if you don't change this um, too low, because if you do that, there's a maintenance task that runs. So if I go here to the site and I check under site maintenance, there's a maintenance task that runs and deletes um, aged objects. So if you set it way too low, below that maintenance task, what you find out is before your objects are are fully settled in config manager, they're already deleted. So if you set it to say, hey, run this. So if I go, yeah, delete aged discovery data, that information. So aged discovery data that's not been active for 90 days is going to delete them. But if you set that, let's say you set this to anything that's not been active for 1 day, delete that. But you set your discovery to 2 days. So anything that got just got discovered will be deleted. So you need to be careful about whatever you set that to. Make sure that you don't set it lower than what you've set in this maintenance task because this is enabled by default, and by default it sets to. No problem, Benji. No problems. Yeah. Yeah, so just be careful of that. Be careful of whatever you're setting. Be careful for it not to conflict with the maintenance tasks that are running in the background. Okay, nice one with Active Directory user discovery. So that brings in our users into Config Manager, and then we can begin to create collections, and queries and all sorts like that. Okay, so the other one is the methods that we can use. What methods can we use to discover computers? So this one, there are two main methods that we can use to discover computers. So Abdul, you want to go for that first? Then Benji will give us the second one.
Yeah, we can use Active Directory system discovery.
Excellent. Aid system discovery. And that one way. So Benji, what's the second method that we can use to discover computers in Config Manager?
Uh, if you have a client or an agent on the computer already, will it report back?
That's actually like it's a good one. It's a good one because you've brought up something that we'll be focusing on today later. So let me just put a star next to it and say already because here's the reason why this one is an interesting one. We should probably just talk about it now. That's the reason why this one is an interesting one. Remember that now we're not talking about config manager client. We're talking about config manager just recognizing that you exist. So again, back to our first picture, you have this client. Yeah, this is your computer. This is your PC, Windows 10 PC. This Windows 10 PC exists. Then you install a config manager client on it, right? Then you can begin to manage it. But before you install this client on it at all, config manager, first of all, has to know that this client even exists. So that's what discovery is for. So discovery is not necessarily like installing, making it a client. So discovery, because you've discovered a computer, for example, doesn't mean you can begin to manage it. There are still things that you have to do after discovering it. You have to install the client on it, right? For you to begin to manage it. But discovery is, I know that you exist. So that's what discovery is for. So after you now discover and you're like, I know that you exist. Now, depending on different methods, which we'll talk about also, then you can push or manually in whatever way install the client on this one. And then now you can begin to manage it. But what you've said is also true. Because what happens is that once you have a client on this guy, by default, this guy will constantly update config manager and say, I still exist, I still exist. So by default, it will constantly do that. Now, let's say something were to happen and this client were to be offline for maybe the user is on maternity leave and the user is offline for like, let's say, 120 days. Yeah, this user has been offline for 120 days. Now, what happens here with the maintenance task that we saw? After 90 days, it's going to say, hey, this guy hasn't reported in, right? I'm deleting you. So it deletes the record. Now, let's say as it deletes the record, this user comes back online, but it still has a client on, right? So once the user switches on the client, the discovery method, which we'll talk about also, this particular discovery method will go the same way that it does. It just goes and says, hey, I still exist. And when it sends that information to this guy will use that information as a discovery method to rediscover the computer and add it back to config manager database. So now the question I have is, does anyone know what this other discovery method is? This one that constantly checks in with config manager. Does anyone know what it is?
Heartbeat.
Good one, excellent. Heartbeat discovery. Heartbeat discovery is the only discovery method in config manager that's enabled by default. So if I come here, if I've not enabled any of these, which I have, the only one that you see enabled by default is this one called Heartbeat discovery. And look at what it says in the description. It says configures interval for configuration manager client to periodically send a discovery data record to the site. Actually, let's just bring up the Microsoft information. This one here, active Heartbeat discovery. Yeah. By default, Heartbeat discovery is enabled when you install a configuration manager primary site. As a result, you only have to configure the schedule for how often clients send the Heartbeat discovery data records to a management point. Although Heartbeat discovery is enabled by default, if it is disabled, you can re-enable it like any other discovery method. Then it now goes ahead and talks about how you can configure this one. But then there's a place that it mentions exactly what Benji mentioned about um, how Heartbeat discovery can be a way to rediscover clients that have been deleted in config manager. So which is basically what we just described now. So in other words, the client exists, it's been offline for a long time. The maintenance task is running in the background constantly in config manager. The maintenance task runs, deletes the record because it's been inactive. Now, because the client exists on that machine, but the machine is inactive, all of a sudden the machine become active again. The client by default contact config manager, and then that method now in this case is used as a rediscovery method to rediscover that client. Is that clear, or is there any question regarding that? Does anyone have any question regarding this one? Or is that clear?
It's clear.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on. So yeah. So AD system discovery. Yeah. So PC with client installed already. So which is basically Heartbeat discovery. And just to note, heartbeat discovery is the only discovery method that originates from the client. All other discovery methods originate from the server. If you're discovering users in Active Directory, the server is the one that initiates that request to your domain controller. If you're discovering systems, your server initiates it to the domain controller. But there's another method that you can use to discover computers. What other method?
Network discovery.
Excellent, excellent, Abdul. Network discovery. So here's one thing. There's a big difference between active. So Abdul, now you've given us these two methods. What exactly is the difference between these two methods? Is there any advantage I get? Because that's one of the things that you have to sit down whenever you're doing your infrastructure is, do I enable, you know, all this discovery method? Which ones do I enable? What's the reason for me to enable this one? What's the reason for me to enable this one? So, so Abdul, what exactly, we have these two methods of doing the same thing. What's the difference between them? Let's start with that. So for users, there's
Um,
only one method. For computers, there are two methods or three methods that you can use. What's the difference between the primary two methods?
for Active Directory site discovery, it
Yep,
will discover all the computer that join to the domain,
yep. And what advantage
while
does that give to you if it discovers computers that are joined to the domain? Does it give you any advantage over network discovery?
I don't think so there is any advantage.
Think about it, Abdul. Think about it. Does it give you any advantage?
Yeah, it will give you. I mean, you can assign it to the site, to
Yeah, yeah,
the.
you can also, but there's another advantage that it gives to you. Benji is raising his hand. Benji wants to. Okay, Benji, go
Okay.
ahead. Yeah,
No, what you said earlier, you can manage non-domain joined machines.
yeah. So that's the one. That's the advantage of network discovery. But Active Directory system discovery.
Okay.
What about? Does it have an advantage? Think about it. Your Active Directory infrastructure already has a lot of information about your computers, right?
So
Remember? Yeah, carry on, Taiwo.
select computers you want to add or something.
This one, for example, if I go under network discovery, hey, properties, yeah, I can discover subnet and domains, SNMP devices, DHCP, yeah, whatever. Look at just basic information. I'm getting IP. He said, okay, enable network discovery, type of discovery, topology. Okay, what will topology give me? Need to only discover IP subnet. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, topology and client. What will this give me? Okay, this will find the topology of your network and potential client devices. In other words, hey, I will discover, your subnet and I will discover the IP addresses of the client. Okay, thanks for those two information. Okay, what's the last option? Topology, client, and client operating system. Okay, I will not only discover the subnets on your network, I will discover the IP addresses of the client, and I will also discover the operating system of the client. And thanks very much for those three information. Okay, let's go to the other method. I go under properties. It's like, yeah, you can configure me, but look at this. Look at all this information that Active Directory already has that now I can bring in, of which if I use network discovery, I won't be able to get all this information. And this information right here is where some of the power of config manager comes in because it gives you flexibility. So the other one, you have machine IP address, you have the subnet, and then you have the operating system. This one is giving you information in Active Directory, name, the GUID, the lockout time, the logon time, the last log off, is it recycled, is it deleted, home drive, home directory, is giving you massive amount of information that you can pull in. And based on those informations, you can write queries that you can use to do all manner of targeting. And it just gives you like a lot of deployment flexibility. I'm not sure, is that clear, or does anyone have any question regarding that?
Um, okay, because I've not used the network discovery before,
Yeah.
But so what information? Okay, let's say for instance, I'm not using system discovery, I'm using network discovery.
Yep,
It will find all the pieces on my network.
yep.
But what information will now be visible from
So
to me on SCCM?
so that's the information that we just saw now. So it will find the subnet. Yeah. So if you enable Active Directory, enable network discovery. Actually, let's enable it now. Network discovery. Topology. It says this topology. If you enable just topology network discovery, I will just go out and look for the IP subnet on your network. That's all. I won't be looking for any client and all that. Topology and client. Okay. I will go out and I'll look for the IP subnet of your network, and I'll also look for the IP addresses of the client. In other words, this one will probably be using something like ping. Discover the subnet, ping everything, and say, hey, give me your IP address. Thanks very much. Bye bye. This one will go a step further, topology client and operating system. This one will probably be using SNMP, in which case I will try to query the device by SNMP. So SNMP, remember the Hangout we were in Taiwo, where the guy taught us about SNMP.
SNMP, yeah.
Yeah, with the SNMP is the way you ask a question, it's a questioning protocol. You ask a question of a device, the device gives you the answer. So SNMP is just a protocol that has questions. So you ask a question and say, hey device, can I get some information about your operating system? And the device replies and says, yeah, I can give you some information, which is something where if you have a tool like, let's go, there's this tool I have, or no, not this tool I have, this tool that's popular called Nmap. um, Network, or just, no, not that one. If I go network tools, there we go. Nmap. So which is just basically, you can go and it can ask questions of devices in your network, and you can use it to discover operating system of devices. For example, I'm not sure what's the IP address of this client. So this client is not joined to my internal domain, but let's see if I can see if I get IP config 192.168.2.2. Okay, let's take this information and then let's scan 192.168.2.2. Do an intent scan on that. And it can ask questions of my device, and my device, if I've so configured it, can answer and give and say, okay, here's my IP address, here's my default gateway, here's my operating system that I have on, and all that. So let's see. It said, oh, I've scanned all the ports. Of course, you can see all my ports are open. And let's see, did it find, so it says skipping OS scan because it doesn't work against your machine. Okay, yeah. It said because I can't do an operating system scan against myself. So that's why I'm not going to work. But yeah, if it's for another device, you can actually, try to check and see, hey, can I get the operating system of this device and stuff like that. So that's the kind of information that this one will give you. And actually, let's enable this. So if I go topology client and client operating system, because I have clients on my network that are not on this domain. So if I go subnet,
So um,
yeah, carry on,
will
Taiwo.
network discovery,
Yeah,
will it show the computer name? Because I'm not seeing any details or any information about computer name here.
no, no.
It won't.
So the answer is no. Yeah.
So
Or
I think,
actually, yeah, carry on, Taiwo.
no, so I was thinking, so what's the advantage of network discovery? Is that to discover other devices that are not Windows, or maybe
Benji mentioned the advantage earlier. So Benji, what was the advantage you mentioned before?
yeah, not the is it not the domain or something?
Exactly, because now you may have devices that are on your network but are not on the domain. So how do you discover them if they are not in Active Directory? Because Active Directory system discovery only discovers whatever is already in Active Directory. But if you
Oh,
want to discover, so this one, it's advisable to use this one as a supplement to Active Directory system discovery. Now, majority of the machines on your network are probably joined to your domain. So in other words, you know where they are, go discover them exactly where they are, and you get way much more information out that way. But then, hey, there are some machines that are not joined to the domain. Okay, let's go discover them. Um, let's go discover them, or via network discovery. So let's enable this one. So this is like I have multiple subnets. So this is like my own home subnet. So let's see what this guy finds. So let's say find that subnet. I have no domain, no SNMP, no DHCP, no. Okay. So let's just say enable network discovery. Click apply, and let's watch my computer crash. So yeah, what's happening is that actually I'm not sure. Do I have Wireshark on this machine? Is that there's a lot of traffic that's going out right now. No, maybe not. I thought I had Wireshark on all my computers. Maybe not. No, no Wireshark. But if I go task manager, let's see what the network activity is like. Um, okay, so okay, I've enabled it. Properties. Okay, so let's go devices. Let's see if it's found anything. And actually, let me check the host name of this device. Host name is test PC3. So still not. Yeah, so we'll probably come back to this one. Let's give it some time to do its thing. Then let's come back to it. So again, go back to properties. Yeah, I've enabled that. Subnet to search is 192.168.2.0, giving it the IP address. And actually, just let me make sure that I can ping 192.168.2.2. Yep, okay, good. So that's okay. Yeah, so we'll come back to this after, and then we'll see the kind of information that this guy gives to us. So then we'll go from there. So those are the two methods that we have. So we have system discovery, and now we know what the advantage is. Main advantage is, hey, if you can discover, if you know where your systems are, most of them are joined to your domain, go discover them there. You get way much more information, because once the machine is discovered, and then the other thing is that when using Active Directory system discovery, is that you can actually filter the information that you're discovering in Active Directory. So in other words, this is different from I've discovered you, I've installed the client on you. Now, you've not contacted the network in a while. I'm going to delete your record. So that's one. So this one is different. This one is during the process of I'm trying to discover you, I'm finding out if you are a stale record or not. So I can say when configuring Active Directory system discovery, I can say options, only discover computers that have logged onto a domain in a given period of time. So this is discovery. This is not, I've discovered you, now I'm doing maintenance. This is not maintenance, this is discovery. So when the SCCM site server is querying Active Directory, it's looking in the last logon time field and it's like, okay, you've not logged on within 30 days. Thanks very much. I know you exist, but I'm not going to discover you. Okay, you've logged in the last 15 days. Yep, I'm going to discover you. So in other words, you can filter what you bring into Configuration Manager based on time that they've logged on into the domain. Or you can even use this other option to say discover computers that have updated their computer account password in a given period of time. So it will use the last password update field attribute in Active Directory to determine, should I import this machine from config manager or should I not import this machine? Okay. So is there any other question regarding that? Regarding those two methods when it comes to computer discovery? Any other question?
Um,
We've got
Can we go
system.
back into the system discovery?
Yeah.
I've
So
got
let's
one
go
question.
properties.
The
Yep.
property. Under options.
Options. So let's go.
Yes, you said only discover computers that have logged on to the domain
Yeah.
in a given time.
Yeah.
Does that mean, are you talking about computers that have been powered off for a long time?
So by default, so let's go. Um, by default, your computer account also has a username and a password,
Yes,
and they also log into the domain in the background.
yes.
So by default, I'm not sure the exact days. Computer account. So there's a particular machine account password process. Okay, but this one will shine more light on that. Yeah, okay. So look at this. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
So it says, how often does the machine password account change in AD? Okay, so this password change. It says the machine account password change is initiated by computer every 30 days. So if you have it, so by default, so that's the policy that controls it. So that policy will say, so every computer that's joined to the domain, every 30 days by default, they change their passwords. So that's the one. So that means if the computer is not powered on,
At that time, yes.
yeah. So if the computer is not powered on or if it's been disabled, you know, if it's been disabled or is not powered on, it's not going to be changing its password every 30 days. So which is this other option of only discover computers that have updated their computer account in a given period of time. Because so that means that we've waited for 3 months. This computer has not changed its password. I'm not going to discover it. So
Wow.
it's either no longer available on the network or it's been disabled.
Okay. No,
Yeah.
that makes
So
sense.
yeah. So then so machine account password as such not expire in Active Directory. They're exempted from domain password policy. So if a computer is turned off for 3 months, nothing expires. When the computer comes up, it will notice that its password is older than 30 days, and it will initiate an action to change it. And so in it to answer the question that you've asked, both of these options are based on either the machine is powered on or the machine is disabled. Because if the machine is powered off, it won't have logged into the domain for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if the machine is powered off or disabled, it won't have updated its password.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
yeah. So, any other question that anyone wants to ask regarding this one? Any question? Benji, Frank, you okay?
Good.
Yep, can move on. Okay. So yeah, so that's the one for Active Directory System discovery. That's discovering system. So the last one, let's see actually, let's see if this one is discovered anything yet. Nothing yet. I wonder if my firewall is blocking something. So I've got multiple firewalls going on. I've got 3 firewalls in between all these things. I've got the UTM firewall here, which
Is that a software version?
yeah,
Or...
so it's a virtual UTM that just yeah, it's a virtual
I
UTM.
thought you have the hardware or
So I
something.
do, I do also because this one is like in a lab environment, but I also wanted to talk out to the internet. So I've put a firewall here in between the lab and my home environment. So this is
Okay.
the firewall in between the lab and my home environment, and then there's the other firewall. It's a Sophos UTM, and then there's the other firewall between my home environment and the rest of the world.
Is it a free software download?
For home version, yeah. So the Sophos, there's a free Sophos UTM home. So free Sophos UTM home. So there's a home edition that's free. That's allowed that you can install. Yeah. So free
Yeah, but
firewall home edition of Sophos UTM.
does that have all those funky stuff?
Yeah, it does. It has many. So there are limitations, for example, but it does have like a lot of features that you can use that are enabled here. So it's still the
No.
same software, but I think maybe once you activate the home license, there are some features that it won't allow you to use, but then it can still do a lot. Yeah. Okay. So this one, yeah, I'm not sure. I can see because I can see. Let's go back to just discovery method, network discovery again.
There's a question on the group chat.
Okay. Let's see. What is the technical preview 3? That's a new version. So, no, that's so Benji, that's that's the new Microsoft version. Which one are you referring to? Technical preview 3. Where did that come up?
I think that's the new system center that it's about to be released.
Okay. Oh, I see. I've not actually used that before, and I should. What are you talking about, Benji? You can unmute and ask the question. So, what are you referring to by the technical preview 3?
Yeah, I was just looking at the download links
Mm-hmm.
just to see. I said I can't do SCCM right now because I'm working on my 410 through 412.
Yeah.
I'm just observing, but I
So
just,
the download that you're seeing, does it say System Center or does it say
yeah.
Windows Server?
No,
So,
it says System Center Technical Preview 3.
okay, so that's
Yeah.
System Center 2016.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be
So
the
those,
next one.
there's just 60-day trials. So I'm sure they update those each time.
Yeah. I think because I think it's probably worth checking out also because eventually like whatever we're learning here by next year we'll have to learn the the new one anyway. So it's
I said
something that yeah.
I haven't used 2012. My environment was like 2007 or 8, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
So that's the last one my company owned that I used to work for. So everything I see here, I don't know anything. I
Yeah.
just want to eventually move into it.
Yeah. Nice one. So I tell you something, I just realized something. So here's something that I've missed. So whenever we're configuring network discovery, make sure you configure a schedule, otherwise it's not going to run anything. So I'll
No,
set this to, yeah, because I
even
didn't,
if you even if you configure like run discovery
so
now.
I've said enable discovery, but there's no option to say run it now. So if I right click on it, there's no, like this one, I can
Oh,
run it now, but this one, there's
okay.
no option to run it now. So I have to configure the schedule. So that's one thing to, to remember. So let me set this for run every uh 2 minutes. Yeah, so yeah, let me repost that link, the link that Frank is talking about, because Benji may not be able to see it. Yeah, so that's the link that Frank shared with us at the beginning. So good link, very good link.
Yeah, it's excellent.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So let me set this for run every 1 minute. Of course, this is going to overload my network. So let me say run every 5 minutes. Uh, recurrence, yeah, let's say, let's just say none. We just want to see some results. Apply. Okay. And hopefully we'll get some information now. Yep, I'm sure that we'll get some information now very, very soon. And then actually, let's see. Yeah, here we go. So that was what I was looking for. We should be seeing a lot of network activity. So it's not just what, because before it was just quiet. So now you can see, yeah, you can see that. You can see all those spikes. Sending, you can see, it will send, you can see, yeah. You can see that's a lot of network activity going on. Send, receive, and that's one thing to realize is that out of all those discovery methods for computers, two discovery methods that we have, the most intensive one is network discovery because it's querying a lot of devices. How depending on how large your subnet is. If I enable just topology network discovery, that's lighter than if I enable topology and clients, and that's lighter than if I enable topology, client, and operating system. So that's where you see. So and then it's not only like a load on your network, it's also a load on your CPU because whatever record you discover, your CPU will have to take it, the process, the data discovery process is that um, your site server receives that information in form of a little file called a DDR, data discovery record, which is 1 kilobyte in size. So it takes that and passes it onto the data discovery manager component. So there's a component. Remember, Frank, were you in the first hangout where we talked about the component of config manager that we have um, some services and some threads within some services. Remember? Do you remember? Where we talked about services and some services and threads. I know you remember. Do you remember your look?
Um,
Where we
I,
talked about services and threads. So okay, let me just quickly show that one to you. So that will help. So if I go,
Is this your lab environment?
yeah, it is.
Wow, you've got so many applications
Is
in
it?
there.
Not
Yes,
really.
also.
So this one is the one that we're talking about. So where we have components, right? But if you look at the component, you have, for example, you have a service here, SMS exec, right? It's a service. But so this is basically all the things that are doing all the work in config manager. They are here. They are all components. So the one that's doing for data discovery is discovery data manager. This one, that's the component. So this is a service. This is a thread within the service. So you can see thread of SMS executive. So this is the SMS executive service. But within this service, there are multiple threads. And those multiple threads handle different components that do different things. So discovery data manager is the one that's responsible for discovery. So the information comes to this component. This component uses your CPU to process that information and then stores it into database. So that's why you have to be careful because it's not only network intensive if you enable network discovery, it's also CPU intensive. So I think we should have some information now. So let's go look that up and let's see. Um, assets and devices. Yeah, I think it will come in eventually. So let's give it the time. So what could be happening or what's probably happening in the background? So actually, this is another opportunity to view the logs. So let's view the log and see what's going on. So if I go open, and by the way, this is also another important thing to note. The logs are really, really straightforward. So this is the log for Active Directory Forest Discovery, AD Forest Disk. This is the log for Active Directory System Discovery, AD Sys Disk. This is the log for Active Directory User Discovery, AD User Discovery. The one for Network Discovery, I think um, it's not NetDisk. It's the same one. Yeah, I think it's DDM, Data Discovery Manager. I think that's the one for Network Discovery. Because again, remember that the discovery is handled by the Data Discovery Manager component. And let's see what it's done so far. So yeah, so you see DDM is configured to synchronize the network config data files at startup every 15 minutes after. Okay, that wasn't what we configured. Create unknown system CDR already created. Um, so actually, let's go quickly. Let's find out. Um, log files. Okay. Um, Frank, do you know what the log file is for network discovery? Otaiwo, do you know what it is? The log file.
What I usually do, I always use the date modified or
Yep.
something. I don't know if that would work.
So
Oh,
this, yeah, no,
yeah,
this
I
one.
did modify. So you check which one, the
Um,
most recent log.
I know this one is W source. So I have W source enabled. Um, let's see. So there's this good document by Microsoft that contains all the log files. So this one, if you're going for the exam, this is one good one to really pay attention to. Network discovery. Oh, okay, it's NetDisk. I didn't even know that there's a NetDisk. So let's look for a NetDisk.
Never heard of that.
Okay, but I can see it there. I can see NetDisk here. But according to this one, there's a NetDisk. Um, netdisk.log site server. Network discovery.
Right there.
Yeah. So but the thing is, I can't see. Can you see NetDisk here? I can't see NetDisk. Can you see NetDisk?
No, not there.
Mhm.
Did it actually run on that client yet?
So that's the other thing is that has he actually
Hey,
run
what's it?
at all?
You gotta look in the the log there that tells you what happens. I forget the name of it. We were just looking at it a minute ago.
Let's go. You're talking about the DDM. Is it the DDM log? The
Right
DDM.
there, something manager, CH manager, one of those.
Okay, you're
Maybe.
talking about CCM.
Um, yeah.
So this is a good one for us. So so network discovery is probably not on because I can't see the logs here, except the logs are saved in a different location, which I don't think you should. Or SMS exec, is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah, they all look the same after a while.
Let's see SMS exec. Because it'll be a good thing to see what's actually going on. AD user discovery. Mm,
Does it say it crashed at the top?
which one?
Oh, never mind. It just says stopped
Now, where's that?
right where your mouse was. It says discovery agent stopped.
Okay. No, so they do stop. So what that's the other thing to notice about these components is that they're not always active. So for example, if Active Directory user discovery agent, if it starts running, after it finishes, it stops. So that's one thing to notice because if we go back here and we'll go back to monitoring. So that's one important point to notice about this one is that the components are not all active at the every time. So there are some components that basically they come alive. Is there something for them to do after they finish doing whatever they are doing? They basically, if I go and just query all of them, you notice that some are in a stopped state, like this one. Active Directory Forest Discovery Manager is stopped because it's not discovering anything. When it's time, when the schedule comes, it starts. So you can see this one is stopped, network discovery. So if I say start, let's see, and then query again, running. Okay, so let's see if there's any log now that says netdisk F5. Yeah, here we go. Finally. So we had to we had to go there and run it manually. Could not get SNMP response from this one. So that's one of, so this one actually it's good that we're doing this because you know what I'm saying here is that hey, it's trying to discover my internal network, my 192.168.140, which is my internal network. So there's no point discovering, you know, two networks or the same device with two methods. There's no point doing that. So actually, Microsoft advice in the document that we were seeing earlier, Microsoft advice is, A, make sure that you don't overlap these methods of discovery because you're just putting unnecessary load on your CPU, your computer CPU. So let's go back here. I think it may have some information. Yep, there you go. Can you see that, Taiwo? So we have 192.168.140.254. Okay. What else do we have? Nothing. You get the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's like, hey, I've got nothing. You've got nothing, basically. It's like, hey, I know the IP address. I can try to look for the operating system if I can find it. If not, I've got nothing for you, sorry. But if you use Active Directory System Discovery, you have like all this wonderful information about attributes, and all kinds of stuff that are really, really interesting. So yeah, I mean that's good troubleshooting for us, right? I really like that because now, for example, if you want to run network discovery manually, for example, it's not running, you can come here, you know, actually, if I go and stop, because that's one other thing, you can go and restart the, you can go and restart the SMS executive service, which will restart all these other threads within the SMS executive service. Or you can just go and restart the exact component that you're doing itself. In this case, the component we're dealing with is SMS network discovery. So I just started it, and all of a sudden, discovery started working, and it has finished now. And then if I go back here and refresh this one again, let's see if we have more information. Yeah, it's not discovered anything more than that. So does that answer your question, Taiwo? In terms of what
Yeah.
information do we get? You just get your IP address and you get operating system. That's all.
Okay, so you're just talking about the client still right now, or the discovery, not, if there's no client, you're not going to have any data in there, right?
So again, remember, here's one other thing. Remember that whatever data you're seeing in config manager, it's not only coming from the config manager client. Because for example, if you want to write a query and say the last login date for this computer, that information is not coming from the SCCM client. That information is coming from Active Directory. That's no information that's coming from SCCM client. So you have a client on a device, doesn't mean you get all these other attributes that Active Directory is giving you. If I go, I'm not sure if I've got Active Directory on this machine, probably not, but let's try. Get AD. Oh, okay, yeah, we do. Get AD computer, let's say get AD computer LB DC1, and we get like a lot of information out from this and lot of attributes. So all this information are coming from Active Directory, not from SCCM client. This information is coming from what SCCM server has discovered about this device in Active Directory. So you can get information like hardware inventory from SCCM client. You can get information like software inventory from SCCM client. But information about operating system hotfix, operating system, primary group, you can't get that from SCCM client. This has to come from Active Directory. Does that answer your question? Benji?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought all the information came from SCCM.
Yeah. So they don't come from us. Yeah.
I've managed SCCM, but I've never deployed it myself. So
Yeah.
I've just administered it after the fact.
Yeah, I understand. And then the other thing is because actually I can go to this device. So once you discover the device, I can go properties because the method you use to discover the device, then it starts using Heartbeat Discovery for maintaining it. But it will tell you, hey, I discovered this device using this method, and you have no information. You've got absolutely no information about, you got nothing. But here, if I go and say, show me the properties of this guy, tell you, yeah, I discovered this guy using Active Directory system discovery. And because of that, I have all this other information. But all this other information didn't come from the SCCM client. All this other information that you're seeing here came from Active Directory. So again, remember the only information you're getting from SCCM client are the features that SCCM support. And which features does SCCM support? hardware inventory, software inventory, asset intelligence. That's the only information you can get. When was the last time you logged into the domain? No idea. What other information does Active Directory attributes have? It's got lots of information that you can't get. Maybe did I close this already? Yeah, maybe I closed it already. Yeah, but you get the point, right? Okay, so let's move on. So we've talked about this one, and for Abdul, what you missed was we just talked about why you want to use Active Directory System Discovery because you get way much more information. So we just enabled network discovery, and basically all you get is IP address. At most, you get the operating system. You don't get any other information. So that limits the queries that you can use. Yeah, you can use queries for, all kinds of attributes in Active Directory. Yeah, you basically are limited to IP address and operating system. That's all. So that's one advantage of whatever method you're using and when selecting that. Okay, so that's the method to discover networks. So the other one is method to discover subnets or to discover networks. And why is this important? Why would we want to discover our network? Why will it be important to config manager? Anyone wants to attempt that? What's the reason? Now we have users, we've discovered users that we have. Okay, we've discovered computers that we have, either from Active Directory or from network discovery. Now we've discovered and we're aware of what's available on our network. Now we can begin to install clients on those computers. Good one. But for example, like this one, everything is optional, but some are more important than the others. For example, config manager is to manage resources, mainly users and computers. For you to manage users, you have to enable this one. For you to manage computers, you have to enable at least one of these ones. This one, on the other hand, is not compulsory because you really don't need it for config manager to function. But yet it's important in a way. So what's the importance of this one? So what would your answer be if I just ask Frank, if I say why is this one important? Why would you want to discover networks in config manager?
Um, to give you another method to gather your clients.
Maybe, yeah, maybe a little bit, yeah. I'll say, I'll say let's give you three points for for that in 10 points. So you're close. So there's what other advantage do we get from discovering networks in Config Manager? Abdul, you're back online now. Any advantage to discovering networks? Hmm? Any idea, Abdul? Or let's go to Taiwo then. Taiwo.
I don't know. Inventory, just gathering.
Inventory, yeah. Is similar to what Frank mentioned, but that's like a very little part of it, of the reason why you want to discover networks. Benji, any thoughts? What do you think?
Monitoring. It's not.
Not really monitoring. I
Um,
mean, Benji, what do you think? What's your thought?
I'm sorry, I was distracted.
No, it's all right. So we're talking about, okay, what advantage is it for us to discover networks in Config Manager? Discovered users, discovered computers, discovered networks. Why? What's the advantage?
Set your boundaries by that.
Excellent, excellent. That's the discover boundaries. That's the only reason.
hmm,
And what
I don't
does
know.
discover boundaries? What advantage does that give us? Administration advantage. Because now we not only have computers and users that we want to manage, now we can use the network discovery information or networks that we've discovered and brought into Configure Manager to do strategic and proper administration. So we can say, client on this network, this is your distribution point, this is your management point, this is your state migration point. Client on this network. So because otherwise config manager won't have that intelligence except we discover this. So this ties back to boundaries that we talked about last week. So the main reason is for the boundaries, and boundaries in config manager simply means networks. That's all they mean. So There are two methods that we can use to discover boundaries, or sorry, to discover networks. So number one is the AD forest discovery. So in IT, occasionally we get some things that are wrongly named. So it happens once in a while. You just get some of those things that, for example, you have your operating system and then you have your boot volume. Your boot volume contains system files, and your system volume contains boot files. So why doesn't boot volume contains boot files and system volume contains system files? No idea. But boot volume is system files, system volume is boot files. So in the same way, you've got AD forest discovery, and instantly you're thinking, yeah, it's gonna discover forest. No, it's gonna discover sites and subnets. That's all. So this is one of those things. You should have named it AD subnet discovery or AD site discovery, but instead they named it AD forest discovery. That's misleading. So because if we go under AD forest discovery in config manager, you see that there's actually nothing about forest that is discovering. So if we go under discovery method and we go, let's enable AD forest discovery. Okay, enable that. Okay, and what is it going to discover? Automatically create Active Directory site boundaries when they are discovered. Are you telling me that what this thing is doing is going to go into Active Directory, discover the sites and subnets in Active Directory, and you've named this AD forest discovery? Yes. So that's all it's doing. It's going to get your sites, and so when that information comes into Active Directory, so because I've selected this option to say automatically create Active Directory site boundaries when they are discovered, I can now go into boundaries here and I find my AD site here. So what that gives to me is that I can now use AD site to create boundary groups, and the advantage that this one now gives me is that I can now use this to intelligently administer my network. So I can use this to say, okay, any person in these boundaries or in this subnet, listen, these are your site system servers. This is the distribution point that's close to you. This is the management point that's close to you. This is the state migration point that's close to you. And now I can have more strategic network, config manager network, so that whenever I send an instruction to a client in Germany and say install this application, it's not going to attempt to download the software from a server in Japan, or it's not going to attempt to be communicating with a server in Japan as its management point. It's going to be using any site system within its boundary group. That's what it's going to be looking to use. And then we'll see that later. We can configure it to say if the ones in your boundary group is not available, feel free to go talk to the ones in the other boundary groups, but this is the ones that you try first. So, but we'll talk about the other one, about the fallback um, site systems later. So is that clear, or does anyone have any question about forest discovery? So that's one method. One method is forest discovery. The other method that you can use to discover site and subnets is the one that we already saw, which is the network discovery. Because network discovery, if I go to properties again, it says there are three types of network discovery that you can enable. You can enable just topology. What will topology give you? It's a topology discovery types finds the topology of your network by discovering IP subnets. So that's what that one will do. So it's going to find IP subnets. So actually, if I go under boundaries, yeah, so because you can have boundaries that are based on Active Directory sites, which are basically IP subnets with a name, and this one, which is IP subnets, or you can give an IP range, an IPv6 prefix. So are types of boundary types that we can have. So we can use either network discovery to discover a network, or we can use Active Directory for its discovery. So we can use network discovery here also. Any question regarding what we've discussed so far? Any question, or is it clear? Abdul, any questions?
No, I have no any question.
Yep. Okay. So um, let's do some trivia then before we finish today. We talked about discoveries today. So number one question. Actually, let's bring up this. let's bring up this one to discuss questions for today. I have some good questions for you today. So Abdul, you ready for the questions for today?
Let's go.
Let's see. Okay. Mm, mm, mm. So I want to bring up the ones from the textbook exactly. So let's see. Scroll down, scroll down. Come on, come on. I'm just scrolling down to the question section. Where are you? Questions. Okay. Just keep going down, 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 down. Questions. Where are you? Okay. There we go. Question number 1 goes to Abdul. What's the purpose of the heartbeat discovery method?
It will detect your machine still in the network or not.
So what do you mean by whether it's still on the network or not? So let's start with heartbeat discovery method. Is it enabled by default or do you have to manually enable it?
No, it is by default enabled.
It's by default enabled. And by default, how often does it run? What's the schedule that it runs on by default?
Sorry again?
What's the schedule by default? What's the default schedule that Active Directory, that heartbeat discovery runs? What's the default schedule? Every
Um,
5 days, every 4 days, every 7 days?
7 days, I think. 7 days.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Yeah, so you're right. So it's basically heartbeat discovery method is basically a way for clients to keep themselves alive in Config Manager. So
Yeah.
again, if I have a Config Manager client here, and I've installed the Config Manager client on it, and I have my server here, which is my management point. Because I have the client on here, this client has to keep itself alive. So by default, every 7 days, this client will basically send something called the same record that you send when you're discovering a DDR, a data discovery method. Every 7 days sends to this guy. This guy will take that information and basically use it to refresh the client in Config Manager to say you're still alive. So this one is the only method that is initiated by the client itself. But of course, the client needs to be installed on this first. And it's basically used to keep this guy's record alive in Config Manager database. Because what happens is, if this guy were to go offline completely and goes offline by default, goes offline for more than 90 days, and it's not sent any DDL to this management point for more than 90 days, on the 90th day, Config Manager, the maintenance task, will delete the record from the Config Manager database. But then the good thing is that because this guy still has a client on it, whenever it comes back online, this DDR can be used for rediscovery and to rediscover this machine. So good one. Okay, next question. I can see Benji as done as if he went to get a cup of coffee. Come back, Benji. So here's the next question. You change an attribute on an Active Directory user object. You expect that the Delta discovery should identify the change within 5 minutes. However, Delta discovery does not discover the change. What might be the problem? Who wants to go for that? Benji.
You deleted it.
Excellent, excellent. You deleted it could be that the change that you're talking about, okay, but again, okay, so that could be one because it's good for you to bring that out because we said Delta discovery doesn't discover deletions, right? So it discovers modifications and all that, but doesn't discover deletion. But what you're saying here is that you actually just change an attribute on Active Directory user object. You expect that Delta Discovery should identify the change within 5 minutes. However, Delta Discovery does not discover the change. What might be the problem? Any other thing apart from, let's say this is not just deletion. It says you've changed an attribute.
Time isn't set to 5 minutes.
Okay, that's a good point also. So time isn't set to 5 minutes. Any other reasons that might be the case? Any other reasons? Any other reasons? Anyone?
It's not part of the schema.
It's not part of the schema. What do you mean by it's not part of the schema?
Of your attributes that you had.
Excellent, excellent. That's the answer. So because you make a change on an attribute, um, if the attribute is not added to attributes that you've imported into config manager, it's not going to show. Yeah. So is that clear, or does anyone have any question regarding that? Is that clear? Okay, so let's go for the next one. So this is for you, Frank. So let's go. So question, Active Directory System Discovery does not discover several computer resources. You verify that the computer accounts are in ADDS. What else should you check?
Whether they have active clients.
Active client. So what do you mean by the active client?
Whether the like we talked about the heartbeat before, whether that is they're checking in.
Again, look at the question. It says Active Directory System Discovery does not discover several computer resources. You verify that they are in ADDS. What else should you check?
خلاص جاي دحين.
What did you say, Abdul? So what else? Remember. So it's saying these objects are in Active Directory. Let's say they are enabled. Yeah. Let's say they are enabled. What else can you check?
Make sure you have you don't have too many attributes put on it.
Yeah. So this is let me show you what the answer is. In Active Directory System Discovery, you can specify locations to search, right? In Active Directory. So exactly. So that's your answer.
Oh, so you weren't looking in the right OU?
Yeah, exactly. So it's this one. So because if I go here, where's my computer again? Did I close my remote? Okay, yeah, here we go. So if I go to discovery method, Active Directory System Discovery, if the computer I verify this computer is in Active Directory, but let's say here I've only configured it to look for this container. But I'm like, yeah, the computer is in AD, but it's not in the container that I've set config manager to search.
We can't see that.
Can you see my screen?
I see the paint.
Paint. That's strange because I'm sharing my screen. Is anyone else seeing the paint, or can you see my screen, my computer now?
Just paint still.
Okay, so let me go here again. Can you see the computer now?
Yep, just paint still.
Strange. Okay, let me stop sharing and and then let's share again. Next. So share screen share. So I'm sharing my screen again and then this one. So can you see my screen now?
Just paint still.
That's really strange. So you can't see my computer.
I can show you it.
Can you see? You're still not seeing my computer.
No.
That's really strange.
Now I see it.
Ah, okay. Maybe it's just taking a while. Anyone else can see it now?
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Ah, okay. Nice one. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So again, remember that you have to enable this search part, right? That you have to make sure that if the computer exists in AD, um, you have to make sure that you've selected the right part. Is that clear at all?
Yes.
Yeah. So, but apart from that, any other reason you can think of, Taiwo, why a computer will be in Active Directory, but all of a sudden you're like, I'm sure this computer is in Active Directory, but I can't see it in Config Manager. What else could be going on?
Mm, it's an Active Directory.
Yeah.
Window.
I know you know the answer because you asked the question about this. Hey, hello, look at the beautiful baby. How you doing? Hello, welcome to a Hangout today. So yeah, you want to answer the question? Do you want to answer the question for us about Taiwo? I know you know the answer because you asked the question about this. What other reason? It exists in Active Directory, but you can't see it there.
Okay, there exists an Active Directory, but it's not an SCCM.
Yeah, I will show you. I will take you to where the answer is. The answer is right there.
I can't see your screen anymore.
Ah, this is really,
So
really
hold
slow.
on, just trying to think now. If the OU,
So it's not even like the OU is not the problem now. So you've verified that, hey, I have this OU set up, to be searched by
okay,
config manager. Yeah.
it's not if it's not showing, then maybe you need to run a full discovery.
Again, because the auto discovery will discover new objects.
You discover new object. Oh,
So
okay.
look at if you are, I hope you can see my screen because I'm showing you the answer right on my screen now. But for some reason
I
my
can.
screen is not showing. So basically remember the option that we said you can filter out what you discover in Active Directory under the options where you can say only discover computers that have logged in this particular date.
Oh,
Yeah, there
wow.
you go. That's your answer. So you have to look there because if you say only discover computers that have logged in within the past 2 days and the computer has been is offline for like 4 days, and like I can't see you in config manager because during that discovery process, that's when that filter happens. So this is different from the maintenance process where I've already discovered this computer. This computer has been inactive for 90 days by default. Now I'm removing you from my database. This one is as I'm discovering you, I'm checking. Have you updated your password in the last 10 days? Have you changed your computer account password in the last 10 days? If not, I'm not even going to discover you at all. So that's one of the reasons why, because if it exists in Active Directory, but it's not fits the policy that you've set in here about last logon time to the domain of the computer and last time the computer changed its password, then it's not going to be discovered. Okay, so that ends our lesson on discovery. Next week, role-based administration. So role-based access control in config manager. And then after that, so let me bring up the textbook again. Where is it? The skill pipe textbook? Skill pipe, skill pipe. There we go. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So these are the questions that we discussed. Yeah. But after, yeah, so we'll do role-based administration next week, and after role-based administration, um, then we'll move over to configuring the client settings. And after that, so we'll do role-based administration, then client settings next week. So I hope that we got something out of this hangout, though. I hope it's been useful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, does anyone have any questions about what we've discussed today before we go? Any question in any way? Anything that's confusing? Anything that you need to clarify? Hello. Let me see. He's a really, really nice looking boy. He's just relaxed. Hello. Hi. So anyone has any question? Abdul, do you have any questions?
Actually, I have to go back, for the video because I miss a lot of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. I know. I know.
Yeah.
Sorry, sorry about that. Is it your internet connection?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, so next week, I mean, just try as much as possible. Let's try to just read ahead. Read role-based administration. If it's videos I use, watch videos on role-based administration in Config Manager. Watch it next week, and then we'll discuss that next week. And then for those that are doing 7410, we'll carry on with our 7410.
Tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. So I got the rest of the week off this week.
What are you talking about tomorrow on 7410?
So we'll just carry on installing just the basic server overview, just installing and configuring the first chapter.
Oh, okay.
So because last week we stopped on feature on demand or features on demand. So we'll carry on from features on demand. I think we'll introduce, I think there's a topic on introduction to Azure, introduction to Azure Infrastructure as a Service in the new module. So we'll talk about that one also.
Yeah, I'm testing on the 30th, and none of my books have anything about Azure on them.
Ah,
I was reading the Cybex book last night, and
which version are you using? Because the Azure one is kind of like a recent content. It's if you're doing the content
it's a
for,
Cybex R2 book that I bought.
yeah,
It's I can't remember, but yeah, that book that I have, it basically talks about. Well, I took notes on my phone,
yeah.
but what was it? Uh, where it's different notebook.
Yeah, let me go because there's this other. If I go, I use Born to Learn. I used to be very active on Born to Learn before. Let's go Born to Learn.
Yeah,
Um,
I copied their whole. I copied the whole Born to Learn wiki into my OneNote,
yeah, nice one.
and then I'm just going through and trying to read through that. I don't know. I test next Friday, so there's no way I can. I have too much material.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna try
but
it.
actually,
But
I think most.
Azure,
Yeah,
I can't find my Azure notes. I have to look.
yeah, I think actually like most of the 7410. I think it's
Hey everybody, I want you to.
yeah. So here's the content on Azure. So you can see, so options for building Active Directory in the cloud with Windows Azure, Active Directory and Windows Azure. So it's kind of like a new one. So because when I did my training also, Azure was in there. But then just looking back at the D version, the 410D version, which is the latest version, there's Azure content. At least in module one, there's Azure content on introduction. Then as we go down here, there's Azure content on Active Directory Azure AD because that's really, really important. I tell you, that's really, really important with Windows 10, Active Directory Azure AD. It's basically, Taiwo, this one is also something that you want to be looking into because this is something that could potentially replace ADFS in the cloud.
Okay.
So Active Directory Azure AD. So it's something that could, you see, that's what they get us doing. So by the time we're learning something, they're changing it already.
Oh,
So yeah, there's Azure content in 7410 now. But again,
okay.
I don't think you should trouble yourself actually because if let's say they ask you one question on it, you probably have about 50 questions. Let's say at most they ask you one question on Azure, but the remaining will be like the other content. So
I
I don't
think
think it's
it's
anything
Well,
to
there's like
worry about.
the two different remote types, and then they ask you about IP addressing
Yeah,
and
IP addressing. Yeah, they'll probably ask you IP addressing. They'll probably ask you things
how
like
it.
features on demand that we mentioned last time. That's one thing that you're likely to get about features on demand. You know what we talked about Win SXX. Do you remember? Um,
About an Azure.
no, not on Azure. Win just features on demand. Remember, we were talking about that last week, yeah. So the features on demand, where you can set features on demand and remove features that you're not using from the
Right.
Win SSX directory. So they like asking questions like that, all those kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
I understand all the content except for, like I said, the Azure stuff is very. All the books I have don't have anything on Azure. Half the videos I've watched don't have anything on Azure, or they're
Yeah.
very, very limited.
Yeah.
So
No,
that's what I'm.
I'll say it's not something to worry about, sincerely. I'll say it's not because at most, if anything were to come out, you may not get any question on that. If anything were to come out, at most they asked one question on it, at most.
Right.
Where are you guys getting your outline to basically study off of?
So this one is a really good one. The Born to Learn
The
website.
Born to Learn wiki, yeah.
And then that sends you to that Microsoft page, which is just basically 1,000 unbranched items on there.
Not really, because what they do, like for example, this one.
Objective.
Yeah. So basically, the objective: install a Windows Server, and you get just this one. But
Can you
then,
post a link?
yeah,
I
I can. So actually, if I just go, so if I send this one, then if you go on just that website and just go under the wiki here, and you get like a lot of the certifications, just the outline and the links to. But again, remember that this fits into what we're talking about before, because there's an overload of information in IT where some people are like, no, just ignore the textbook, ignore the videos. What you need to do is to be reading all these TechNet articles. No, I don't subscribe to that. If you're using the videos, you can use this one as a guideline to say, okay, um, plan for server installation. Then go watch your videos on plan for server installation. Go read, if you're using textbook, go read the textbook on plan for server installation, yeah? And just cover it that way. If it's plan for server roles, plan for server upgrade, go read your textbook on server upgrade, go watch the videos on server upgrade and follow it that way. If you're using this one, read the article on server upgrade and follow it that way. So you don't have to stick to a method, because otherwise in IT we get overload of information and somebody coming up with, no, this is the way to do it. Another person is giving you another method and people are recommending 20 different textbooks, and at the end of the day you're like, okay, hold on, I just I just need something, so just pick something, whether
I
it's
really
videos.
the Plural site and the